You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Regina Stevens, New York Transportation Development Corporation's Assistant Corporate Secretary. Before we begin our meeting this afternoon, I would ask everyone to please mute your lines unless you are speaking. I will now take a roll call of the directors to ensure we have a quorum present on the line. Please say present when you hear your name. George Haggerty,
Present.
Kathleen Mize,
Present.
Kavina Raghavan.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, Acting Chair Haggerty, we have our quorum. You may start the meeting.
Thank you, Regina. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York Transportation Development Corporation for Monday, April 11, 2022. Before we get started, I ask that everyone mute their phones until you're ready to speak. Also, I ask that anyone wishing to speak to please state your name before you begin. I'd like to note for the record that in accordance with current legislation, this meeting will be conducted via teleconference. I will also note for the record that the public has been given the opportunity to comment on the agenda items by submitting their written comments to nytdc@esd.ny.gov by 5 p.m. on Friday, April 7th. And no comments were received from the public concerning today's agenda items. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to today's agenda items. If so, please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to the item. Okay, hearing none, I will now ask Miyoko Okubo to present the first item on today's agenda, requesting authorization to adopt revised procurement guidelines for the corporation. Miyoko, please begin.
Thank you. Today, I'm requesting that the board authorize adoption of the revised guidelines regarding the use, awarding, monitoring, and reporting of procurement contracts. The corporation will enter into various contracts in the course of conducting its authorized purposes. In order to ensure the consistent, fair, and competitive retention of goods and services, staff recommends the voluntary adoption of 2022 procurement guidelines adopted by the Empire State Development Board of Directors at its March 24, 2022 meeting. These guidelines will replace the procurement guidelines previously adopted by the corporation. Guidelines set forth policies and procedures to be followed by the corporation when seeking to contract for goods or services. It should be noted that these guidelines are only required of public authorities and public benefit corporations, not local development corporations such as the New York Transportation Development Corporation, but they are proposed as a statement of the best practice and procedures. No contracts will be deemed invalid merely because these guidelines have not been followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Miyoko. I'd like to remind everyone to please state your name before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public. I will now entertain a motion for approval on this item.
Kathleen, motion approval.
Second?
Pravina. Richard can second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. The motion carries. Miyoko will present the next agenda item requesting authorization for the corporation to adopt ESD's pre-qualified list of legal counsel.
Thank you. Today, I'm requesting that the board authorize adoption of the ESD pre-qualified list of legal counsel. Empire State Development adopted a new pre-qualified list of legal counsel at its March 24, 2022 meeting. The board of directors are not currently being asked to authorize the retention of any firm in connection with any matter. Instead, the requested approval and adoption of the ESD list will serve to make available to the corporation a selection of candidate firms that have been through a broad solicitation process. This will allow staff to select from among the candidate firms to recommend to the corporation in the future for retention in connection with a particular project without the need to conduct individual solicitation in each instance. On the basis of overall ESD staff analysis and ranking of the proposals and approval of the ESD board, it is recommended that the corporation adopts the USD board-approved pre-qualified list of legal counsel as set forth in Exhibit A to be eligible to serve as legal counsel as needed for a term of 3 years. It is also recommended that the authority be granted to the corporation's general counsel to extend the term for 1 year. Please note that in the event that the principal partners and attorneys identified as being responsible for ESD's matter or other key members of a pre-qualified firm's team in particular area of expertise leave the pre-qualified firm, the pre-qualification will follow these key law firm members. Similarly, if a pre-qualified firm combines with another firm and such principal partners and other attorneys remain with the newly combined firm, the newly combined firm will be considered to be pre-qualified in that area of expertise. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Miyoko. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item? As previously noted, we do not have any comments from the public. I will now entertain a motion for approval on this item.
Hi, this is Pravina. I motion to approve.
Second?
Colleen, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Miyoko. Please continue with the next agenda item, requesting authorization to appoint underwriters, a financial advisor, prepare documents for the issuance of the bonds, and take related actions in connection with Terminal 6-7 redevelopment project at John F. Kennedy International Airport.
Thank you. JFK Millennium Partners, LLC, the borrower, has requested that the New York Transportation Development Corporation to issue special facility revenue bonds in one or more series or sub-series, including but not limited to Series 2022A, tax-exempt AMT, and Series 2022B, taxable, JFK Airport Terminal 6-7 redevelopment project, which may be fully or partially supported by one or more bond insurance policies or reserve fund sureties, the bonds. Proceeds of the bonds will be used by the borrower to pay costs and reimburse borrowers for the costs already paid relating to A, the demolition of the existing Terminal 7 at the John F. Kennedy International Airport, the airport. B, the design, construction, and equipping of a new Terminal 6 head house and departure and arrivals area. And C, the design and construction of other related facilities at the airport, the project. Pay a portion of the interest on the bonds accruing during the construction of the project. Fund one or more debt service reserve funds for the bonds. and to pay cost of issuance related to the bonds. Today, we ask that the directors authorize the following actions that I will discuss in further detail in relation to this bond issuance. The selection of co-senior managing underwriters and additional underwriters, the appointment of financial advisors if utilized, the holding of a public TIFRA hearing, inducement of a project for private activity financing, and declare the official intent of the corporation to provide funds for the reimbursement of pre-issuance expenditure for the project, and the preparation of documents in connection with the bonds. Selection of underwriters. Goldman Sachs & Co. LLC and Wells Fargo have been selected as the co-senior managing underwriters for the bonds. Goldman and Wells Fargo are on the corporation's pre-qualified list of underwriters that was created after an RFP process by Empire State Development and adopted by the corporation on February 24, 2020. The board was selected Goldman and Wells Fargo for the extensive experience in all aspects of municipal finance, the extensive experience as an underwriter on other corporation and ESG bond issuances, and their responses and ratings in the pre-qualification process. Corporation, in consultation with the borrower, will have the option to select other underwriters from the corporation's pre-qualified list of underwriters. Selection of financial advisor. The corporation also may select the financial advisor from its pre-qualified list of financial advisors that was created after an RFP process by ESD and adopted by the corporation on February 24, 2020. A financial advisor may be selected based on its extensive experience in all aspects of municipal finance, particularly airport financing. Hourly rate proposal subject to a cap of $250,000. Extensive experience as a financial advisor on other bond issuances, and responses and ratings in the pre-qualification process. Selected firm will be paid by the borrower pursuant to a pre-financing agreement. Federal tax law requirements. Federal tax law, specifically the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, commonly referred to as TEFRA, requires a hearing prior to the issuance of qualified private activity bonds in certain circumstances. Corporation has been requested to act as an issuer of qualified private activity bonds for the project. Consequently, a TEFRA hearing may be required. Applicable notice period for the TEFRA hearing is 7 days. TEFRA also requires that following the hearing, the applicable elected representative of the issuer of the qualified private activity bonds, in this case the governor, approves the transaction. Inducement. Inducement of the project and the declaration of the corporation's official intent to provide funds for the reimbursement of pre-issuance expenditures will enable process of a bond in the expected maximum principal amount of $4 billion to be used, among other things, to reimburse project expenditures made by the borrower prior to the date or dates of the issuance of the bonds. The attached resolution does not authorize or require the corporation to issue the bonds. Documents. It is intended the bonds will be issued finance a portion of the project. In order to do that, the related documents must be drafted and approved for the issuance of the bonds expeditiously. An additional TDC board meeting will occur so that the board of directors can approve the formal final documents. In conclusion, staff asks the directors to authorize the selection of Goldman and Wells Fargo as the co-senior managing underwriters for the bonds, and the ability to appoint additional underwriters as the deal progresses. The appointment of financial advisors, if utilized, that the corporation take action related to a holding of TEFRA hearing, inducement of a project for private activity financing, and the preparation of documents in connection with the bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Miyoko. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to the item? Hearing none, as previously noted, we do not have any comments from the public. I will now entertain a motion for approval on this item.
Kathleen, motion for approval?
Pravina, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Unless someone objects, Miyoko will provide one presentation on the next three agenda items requesting authorization to enter into contract to provide legal services to the corporation for the issuing of bonds in connection with JFK Airport Terminal 6-7 redevelopment project at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Miyoko, please begin.
Thank you. Today, we ask that the directors authorize the corporation to enter into legal services contracts for Bond and Disclosure Counsel in connection with the issuance of the bonds for the JFK Terminal 6-7 redevelopment project that I previously described. Bond counsel is needed to ensure the corporation's compliance with the federal tax law requirements. For an opinion from bond counsel on tax-exempt bonds, and to ensure compliance with applicable securities laws and market practices, it is recommended that Squire Patton Boggs U.S. LLP and Harwick Law Firm LLC, an MWBE firm, serve as co-bond counsel on this transaction. Both firms were selected from the corporation's pre-qualified counsel list. Disclosure counsel is needed to ensure the corporation's compliance with disclosure requirements for issuers of tax-exempt bonds under federal securities laws and market practices. It is recommended that Burger Gray LLP serve as disclosure counsel on this transaction. Burger Gray, a certified MWBE firm, was selected from the corporation's pre-qualified counsel list as having bond financing expertise and experience working on a variety of transactions. Appointment of these law firms would represent the equitable distribution of work among the corporation's rotating slate of bond law firms and MWBE law firms to handle the corporation's debt in terms of size, number of transactions, fees received, and length of time since their last engagement with the corporation. Contract amount and funding source. The contract will be funded in their entirety by the borrower from the bond proceeds on or about the closing on the bonds as agreed upon by the corporation and the borrower in the pre-financing agreement. Counsel will work at a small discount from their typical hourly billing rates. Counsel will agree that the corporation will not be obligated to pay any amounts for services described, except to the extent, if any, that the corporation receives funds from the borrower for that purpose. Thank you.
Okay, are there any items or comments from the directors with regard to these three items? Okay, hearing none. As previously noted, we do not have any comments from the public. I will now entertain a motion for approval on all three items.
This is Pravina, motion to approve for all three items.
Second?
Kathleen, second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. There being no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
This is Pravina, motion to adjourn.
Okay, so moved. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation in today's meeting. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right, bye
everybody.
now.
Have a good day.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.